Yes, this is just one of the 18 trophies that 18 of our very own journalists received courtesy of the Ministry of Sports. As we live by our slogan as KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner, we're going to be giving you details just that you know. One of them happens to be Daniel Wahome is going to be joining me in the course of this particular bulletin there to bring you up to speed with what is happening in the sporting arena. My colleagues from the sports desk, well, you did us proud. Now, on a moment of also pride, it is exactly 10 years after Kenyans thronged various polling stations and cast their ballots for their first county executives, and also exactly 365 days when Kenyans woke up and thronged polling stations across the country to usher in the Kenya Kwanza government. On a night of anniversaries, right here on Prime Edition KBC Channel 1, we are going to be tracking hits and misses of Devolution that is currently at 10 years and also bringing you up to speed with those stories that have been making headlines in the last 12 hours. First things first, the highlights. Government employees awarded between 7 and 10% salary increment spread across 2 years. Two sides of the same coin. Two CSs give two sides of the controversial Worldcoin data collection saga. And much ado about talks agenda. Kenya Kwanza and Azimio negotiators begin Bomas dialogue amid disagreement over common agenda. Watching Prime Edition, and I am Regina Manyara. My colleague is none other than Lady Lucy Mora on sign language interpretation. Now, state and public employees will receive a salary increment of between 7 to 10% that will be spread across 2 years to be backdated as of 1st of July this year. Now, in the new review announced by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, teachers will be the major beneficiaries and have been allocated 9.5 billion shillings out of the 21.7 billion shillings set aside in the budget. Now, the president, his deputy president, and government institutions whose salaries are beyond the 50% market positioning will not receive any increment. Give us one minor with the details.
The Salaries and Remuneration Commission (SRC) on Wednesday announced salaries increment for government employees of 7% to 10% to be backdated to July 1st this year. However, the review will only affect salaries for state and public officers who pay below the 50th percentile market position, while salary structures above the 50th percentile remain static.
This review seeks, therefore, to adjust remuneration and benefit structures that are below the target market positioning of the 50th percentile to ensure attraction and retention of requisite skills to the extent of affordability and fiscal sustainability.
SRC Chairperson Lynn Mengich noted that the salaries of the President and Deputy President will not be increased. According to the SRC, the National Treasury has set aside 21.7 billion Kenyan shillings for the exercise for the year 2023-2024 based on the economy positive trajectory. The pay increment will be implemented gradually for a period of 2 years.
Civil service in both national and county governments are below. They are at 39th percentile. Teaching service is below at 36th percentile.
SRC, we engaged with the National Treasury on funding for the review of the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
The teaching service will get the lion's share of the perks at 9.5 billion Kenyan shillings, followed by uniformed and disciplined forces with 4.52 billion Kenyan shillings, and thirdly county government employees with 4.07 billion Kenyan shillings, civil service 1.83 billion shillings, county state officers 408 million shillings, judicial state officers 305 million shillings, executive state officers 126 million Kenyan shillings, Parliament state officers at 78 million shillings, and other public officers will part with 745 million Kenyan shillings. However, the SRC abolished retreat allowances, sitting allowances for institutional, internal committees, and task force allowances for institutional internal committees for the state and public officers. Give us Manyara, Prime Edition.
We will soon know who is going to be benefiting from that particular salary review. Now, President William Ruto has insisted that the opposition must denounce violence as a show of commitment to the anticipated bipartisan talks. The head of state, who has concluded his tour of Central Kenya region, called on the opposition to prepare for the 2027 elections instead of engaging in what he termed as politics of distractions.
On his final day of his tour in the vast Central Kenya region, the president was in Nyeri, where he launched the Narumoru Level 4 Hospital and the affordable housing project in Kirinyaga and Kiambu counties. The president maintaining his criticism on the opposition over their recent anti-government demonstrations. The head of state says he will no longer allow violent demonstrations in the streets as they were disruptive.
Hawa watu tumewaambia mapema mchana, Kenya will never again entertain currency around violence. Violence can never be part of the currency of the political equation of the Republic of Kenya. Tumekubaliana ya kwamba mambo ya vita kama ni mashindano tushindano kwa mawazo.
And as the 10-member dialogue committee begins the much anticipated talks, the president was categorical that he will not allow violent demonstrations within Kenya's borders.
So walikuwa wanazunguka hapa na kitendawili sijui na nini tukawanyorosha waende nyumbani. Ama namna gani? Na wakitaka siwangojee 2027 ndio tutawaonyesha kivumbi mara hii. Sijui kama hata watapata hata agent ya kusimamia mambo yao.
Na tumemwambia si yeye akae ngumu. Kuna watu walikuwa wanajaribu kumsukuma vile walisukuma Uhuru ati auziwe uoga na mtu ya kitendawili amuleke kwa serikali. Mnaweza kubali?
He regretted what he termed as the incitement of the youth who were put on the front line in their confrontation with police, leading to losses of lives.
Musikubali mtu ambaye mtoto wake amepeleka ni mbunge kule East Africa. Mtoto wake akona kazi sijui wapi. Anakuja kudanganya vijana watoto wa watu wengine, ati kubeba mawe, kupiga polisi, kuharibu mali, kuharibu biashara, kuchoma barabara. Kama mtu anataka mambo hiyo iendelee, alete mtoto yake na bibi yake wakuja wabebe mawe wapigane na polisi.
The setup of county aggregation centers, the affordable housing project and the expansion of a digital space, the president says, will serve to fulfill his pre-election pledge of 1 million jobs for the youth.
Hapa Nyeri tumepanga kujenga nyumba 10,000 ya kwanza. Hizo nyumba 10,000 tunahitaji vijana wa Nyeri watatusaidia kufanya hiyo kazi, vijana 30,000. Vijana wa Nyeri mko tayari kwa mpango ya affordable housing? Si tulikubaliana tukipanga ajira tunakubali kazi ni kazi. Ama tulisemaje? Si tulisema wera ni wera.
Leaders in the Mount Kenya region pledging support for government and its policies.
Total support from the Mount Kenya region. Wewe rais ni wetu na sisi tulikuchagua tukijua nini tunafanya. Mambo ya nusu mkate na handshake na cooperation na kunusa serikali na kukaribia serikali hakuna. Mimi Kimani Ichung'wah nikisema leo, kwa sababu tuko na kazi hapa na Rumoro na tuko na ingine Kirinyaga na ingine Thika, wachana na mazungumzo, tuendelee na kazi.
Tunataka kuhakikishia kitu moja, tutakuunga mkono kwa sababu tulikupigia kura. Mimi nilikuwa nasukuma mzee kwa mlima, mayanga ile kuaguka tuliaguka hujayoda.
As President William Ruto concludes his whirlwind tour of Mount Kenya region, he has left no doubt in the minds of his supporters of what his relationship with the opposition in future will look like. John Jacob Kuria, Prime Edition.
The Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja coalition held their initial sittings at the Bomas of Kenya today, with both teams agreeing to kick off the bipartisan talks on Monday. The two sides have agreed to set up two technical teams that will give direction on the agenda of the talks. Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire had stepped in for Kenya Kwanza team leader Kimani Ichung'wah said they came in good faith, pledging to put the interest of Kenyans first. Kalonzo, in his opening remarks, said they will respect the dignity of all participants, the Constitution and the rule of law. Abdiaziz Hashim reports.
The new bipartisan team, led by Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah and Wiper Party Leader Kalonzo Musyoka, this morning held their first meeting at the Bomas of Kenya, picking up the conversation from where the parliamentary bipartisan team left it. The two factions, presenting different agendas for the talks, set out to settle their rivalry through dialogue.
We shall not negotiate, and this is important for us, for any form of power sharing with the Kenya Kwanza alliance.
Also that we will be engaging on the basis of mutual respect, all in the interest of our nation and not in any private interest or any personal interest.
For hours on end, the two leading political factions held a closed-door meeting to settle on the agendas to be prioritized during the talks. Shortly afterwards, it emerged that the coalition were unable to reach an agreement on the agendas, with the cost of living and inclusivity at the heart of their disagreement.
And so, but that was an important thing. We are generally in agreement with the agenda items, but we have to agree on how we frame the agenda because the two sides have the different agenda items.
We cannot afford to fail in this process, and as much as I appreciate we have heavy issues before us, we know we will agree, we may disagree on some.
This forced Kalonzo and Ichung'wah-led teams to form a technical committee that will give direction on the agendas to be handled on Monday.
And so there are matters that will need consultation in the next 1 or 2 days. We think that the technical teams should sit by Friday and generate the necessary documents so that on Monday we get moving.
That will begin the dialogue process once we frame the agenda items, and I think we should be ready with that by Monday. As agreed, we will have the secretariat that will be supported by Parliament.
The talks are aimed at resolving the impasse between the government and the opposition, which had led to a spurt of protest that led to the loss of lives, injuries, and destruction of properties of innocent Kenyans. The bipartisan team is set to hit the ground running next week upon agreement of the agendas to be discussed. Even as both the Azimio and Kenya Kwanza coalition are yet to agree on the agenda of the talks, it remains to be seen how these talks will affect the ordinary Kenyans in the long run. Abdiaziz Hashim from Bomas of Kenya, Prime Edition.
The government was on Wednesday at pains to explain to Parliament how a foreign company was able to avoid detection to set base at the center of the city to harvest iris data from gullible Kenyans for 3 days before it was flagged. Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki and his information counterpart Eliud Owalo were not in sync on how the Worldcoin was able to evade detection and even managed to use Kenyatta Conventional Center and carry out their clandestine activities. The two cabinet secretaries were, however, given more time to consult and give the true position on the current status of the data harvested by the company and the possible action on those who are involved in the illegal activities.
Members of the National Assembly grilled Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki and his information counterpart Eliud Owalo on the safety and legality of operations of a foreign data company, Worldcoin, which was suspended a week ago.
Can he tell us, is it in order for a company to come and operate in this country without proper registrations and proper identification before operations begin?
Katika data ya Kenya ambayo ni muhimu, manake hata Shakahola pia ilikupata off guard na hii pia imekupata off guard. Unaweza kuambia nini wa Kenya mwaka mzima ambao umemaliza kuwa usalama wa Kenya uko thabiti katika mikono yako?
The two cabinet secretaries submitted the government is not aware of the objective of the data collection exercise nor the source of monies that were being paid to Kenyans who agreed to have their eyes scanned.
The government is currently undertaking investigations to establish the intended objectives of the exercise by Worldcoin.
According to Professor Kindiki, investigations were ongoing and all persons involved in the data collection could soon be charged with contravening the Data Protection Act.
That we believe that crimes have been committed. Crimes against the Data Protection Act, crimes against privacy of the people of Kenya.
Worldcoin was first registered with Office of Data Protection in April 2023, but later suspended in May for 60 days, only to resurface in late July to collect data. MPs took issue with the executive for failing to conduct due diligence on Worldcoin and its operatives before Kenyan fell prey to their questionable activities.
It is the responsibility of individual registered entities to undertake public sensitization as opposed to that of the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner subsequent to the registration.
So it is the responsibility of the government to have carried out public participation to understand what this institution was coming to do so that they can be able to protect Kenyans in case there is anything that is out of the ordinary.
Speaker Moses Wetangula allowed the cabinet secretaries to do more groundwork and return to the House after 1 week to address concerns raised by members of the National Assembly. Risho Kiwashira, Prime Edition.
Police are probing an incident in which 5 people were shot and injured in Nairobi's Dandora area as security officers pursued suspected robbers. Buruburu Sub-County Police Commander Francis Kamau, while confirming the incident, claimed the 5 people were caught in the crossfire and rushed to the Mama Lucy Hospital for treatment. Area residents, however, dismissed and questioned the circumstances under which the 5 were shot and injured, even as they called on authorities to investigate the matters.
According to the police, the shooting took place as officers from the detectives unit in Dandora police station pursued suspect robbers after an alarm was raised by the members of the public.
Askari yetu ambaye huwa ni undercover police officers wakiwa doria ile ya kuangalia usalama walipata distress call kuwa kuna watu wanaibiwa.
Buruburu Sub-County Police Commander Francis Kamau claimed a shootout ensued as police tried to arrest the suspected robbers.
Lakini katika ile hali ya kutaka kuchallenge hao ndio wasimame, mmoja wao akatoa bunduki. Ikalazimisha askari wetu kutoa bunduki na kupiga mmoja wao.
However, area residents dismissed the police theory.
Kijana kuona ni basketi akakimbia. Kukimbia ndio akampiga. Amempiga ya kichwa hiyo kijana.
Ilikuwa hapo, lakini yeye mwenyewe alianza na kupiga watu risasi. Wakati aliona amepiga innocent, alianza kupiga hao watu wengine. Kila mtu olela. Bunduki ni mwiko.
Hakuna mtu ameibiwa. Pale total tumeweka usalama. vijana wa bodaboda wako pale, vijana kuna matatu zinabeba zile forward travelers. Security imekuwa vizuri sana hapo toto. So hakuna wizi kwa hapo.
Elsewhere, a night guard was clobbered to death by armed thugs who raided his workplace at Butula Market in Butula constituency in Busia County.
Unakuja unaniibia. Na tena jambo la kuhuzunisha sana, wameua soja mwenye analinda hizo vitu.
Tuambie dio na DC he was carried Butula Maende.
Anybody, mtu yoyote ambaye ako na information ya ndani, saa hii tuende tu uandike statement.
That leads to our fast breather tonight. And for those who are wondering why we have all these trophies on the table, this is just a sneak representation of the awards that our sports desk right here have received today. Further details are coming up in the course of this broadcast. Do not go.
Excellent.
10 years of Kenya's devolved system of governance. A decade of taking services to the people. What are the hits and misses?
Vijana wetu ndio wanafanya kazi hapa. Hakuna kijana ametolewa huko nje ama kaunti zingine kuja kufanya kazi hapa.
Watch KBC Prime Edition this Wednesday at 9 p.m. for comprehensive stock-taking special bulletin, A Decade into Devolution.
모르죠. 최은경이 죽었잖아요. 남북이 비밀리에 합의한 망명작전이었어.
선생님, 저 사람 저랑 어제도 싸웠어요. 너무 건강해서 고래고래 소리도 지르면서 싸웠다고요. 선생님, 저 사람 죽은 거 아니죠? 거짓말이라고 해주세요, 제발. 선생님, 제발. 놓쳤어. 당장 다른 거 수색해.
변신의 기재시구만요. Wiki hii kwenye Mkulima tutaangazia kilimo cha uyoga.
Mushroom kwanza ni ready food, very good for old people like me. It is very rich in protein and it is cholesterol free.
Kisha tuelekee jikoni tuandae kitoweo cha uyoga. Ungana nasi Jumamosi saa 10:30 hapa KBC Channel 1 kwa mseto kamili wa kilimo.
Now, since it's been 10 years since we voted for our very first county executives have the devolved units delivered on their mandate. Tonight, we're going to be tracking devolution that turns exactly 10 years. So do keep it right here, and our Twitter handle is open at KBC Channel 1. Now, cases of personal information leaking from institutions legally obligated to collect data are a growing concern in Kenya. To mitigate this, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is urging data controllers and processors to come up with mechanisms of safely discarding data that is no longer needed so as to protect the data subjects. Now, the team from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner was in Makueni and Elgeyo Marakwet counties, and here's a story as filed by our reporters Nancy Okware and Timothy Kipnusu.
During the sensitization forum in Makueni County, Kenyans sought to know how safe they are as they issue their personal data in this digital era where data is the new oil. The Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, alluding to the growing concern over data breaches, especially by digital lenders.
What were the terms and conditions that you did? When you go through them now when you are conducting investigations, we see that you allowed them to access your contacts. In case you don't pay the loan, you allowed them to call your mother, your father, your boss, your mother-in-law.
This has been partly attributed to the failure by data subjects to read terms and conditions, hence giving access to private information such as contacts unknowingly.
If at all you're being asked to provide your ID, your email address, phone number, your date of birth, ask how this data is supposed to be used. And if you're not given an answer, do not give this personal data.
If you're a data controller and data processor and you are collecting information from minors, there should be an outline procedure on how you will be collecting that information and how you will safeguard the information.
You as a data subject, you have the right to access your personal data, where you can go to an organization and tell them, this is what I want to know about my data, and they should process and they should adhere to your requests.
In case of a data breach, a data processor and controller is required to notify the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner within 72 hours upon knowledge of the breach for action. The data subject should also be notified of the breach in writing within the shortest time possible. Reporting from Makueni County, I'm Nancy Okware, and I now hand you over to my colleague Timothy Kipnusu, who was covering a similar forum in Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Thank you, Nancy Okware from Makueni County. Yes, indeed, the Data Protection Commissioner took their campaign dubbed Data Yangu Jukumu Langu in Elgeyo Marakwet County with a clarion call to area residents to protect and safeguard their personal data so as not to fall prey in the hands of fraudsters. It is during the forum that the data processors and data controllers were urged to adopt practices that will help deal with the data breaches.
How, as a data controller or a data processor, how you need to ensure that the data you handle actually is well kept and maintained.
Imagine our own CS, yeah? They wipe this account. You know what they do? Once they have your number, they will call you incessantly.
Elgeyo Marakwet Deputy Governor Professor Grace Cheserek, who was in attendance, revealed that cases of Kenyans being duped are on the rise.
In Elgeyo Marakwet, we like sharing data carelessly through social media. I think now we have learned today that it is criminal. It is now a crime.
She said the county is committed to ensuring strict adherence to data protection laws.
It is very critical that we learn this and we embrace not only at a personal level, at our organizational level, and we also protect each other as a county government of Elgeyo Marakwet.
You should not be denied the right for you to access your personal data.
I'm happy that Act has come in place and we want to operationalize it, we want to interact with it and see how best we can safeguard some of this information. Endapo imelik kwa njia moja ya uhalifu ama nia mbaya, tuweze kufuata huyu amelik hiyo information, ametumia visivyo.
Timothy Kipnoso for Prime Edition, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Now, a majority of learners at 84% have reported that the internet makes education more exciting, while another 98% feel the internet met their education needs. This was revealed during the launch of an evaluation report on internet connectivity following a pilot program in schools. The report also revealed that internet boosts the education quality, education environment, and attitudes of learners and teachers, calling for the expansion of internet connectivity in schools.
The DigiSchool Evaluation Report was launched by Basic Education Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang, following a pilot program in schools conducted by the Ministry of Education, UNESCO and Huawei Mobile Phone Company. The report paints a picture on the impact of internet connectivity in schools. According to the report, 71% of the learners say the internet makes complex ideas easier to understand, while 54% said it makes learning more engaging. 13% said it increases class attendance. Schools also reported to have saved 120,000 for mobile data bundles.
We would want to see a situation where we can share the teachers that are there. A teacher at Alliance High School can be teaching in Wajir High School. through a virtual system. And this way we can be able to adequately optimize on our human capital.
Despite the positive impact of the internet on the learners, the peers will warn of the dangers that come with it.
This technology is a double-edged sword, and we must be able, therefore, to get ways in which our young ones are protected.
Additionally, the report recommended the prioritization and expansion of school connectivity, extension of training in digital skills, and responsible use of the internet. It also proposed a development of guidelines within schools to regulate the use of the internet and tech gadgets, continued connection of schools, the stepping up of collaboration between stakeholders to provide sustainable internet to all schools that limits recurring expenditures.
As we reflect, we can be able to improve and achieve greater success in the future. This is also why we are keen to organize the creative competition so that the students can also reflect on the impact of the internet.
It also calls for establishment of community internet hubs to facilitate online access for the communities surrounding schools. Serafina Robi for Prime Edition.
Now to the courts, where a 30-year-old man has been sentenced to 12 months in prison for stealing 420,000 shillings. The court found James Moroki guilty of stealing the amount on April 22nd, 2020 from Mirandi Njeri Gadiru. The same court found Peter Gitau Ngige guilty of obtaining money by false pretense. He was charged with obtaining 4.1 million shillings, purporting to be in a position to assist Peter Njenga by a house in Buruburu. Details of this from the Scales of Justice segment.
During a mitigation and sentence hearing at Milimani Law Courts, James Moroki told Senior Principal Magistrate Bernard Uchoi that he has an ailing wife and a kid and he is the sole breadwinner, urging the court to give him a lenient sentence. Being a first offender, the court slapped him with a non-custodial sentence. Before the same court, a verdict was given against Peter Gitau for lying to a client that he will assist him to buy a house at a Nairobi estate. According to the court, the prosecution proved beyond reasonable doubt that the accused received money in his bank account from the complainant. The court will sentence him on Friday 11th August 2023. Elsewhere, a widow charged with 4 offences in a land dispute was arraigned before Milimani Law Court. Purity Mbete Maina was charged with 2 counts of lease forgery and obtaining land registration by false pretense on 2 diverse dates. She was, however, granted conservatory orders by Justice Lawrence Mugambi of the High Court pending hearing of the case. The matter will be mentioned on November 16th, 2023. Michael Mundiga for Prime Edition.
Now, over 54 million people in the Horn of Africa are in dire need of relief assistance as impact of climate change continue to manifest. An IGAD member state meeting on agriculture ministers now wants a coordinated approach by member states to create resilience among communities to cushion them against the adverse effects of climate change.
Changing weather patterns coupled by the threat of transboundary pests due to climate change is a major challenge facing the Horn of Africa. The IGAD Climate Predictions and Application Center Executive Director, Dr. Gulaid Artan, says with the impending El Nino Southern Oscillation expected in the 4th quarter of the year, there is a need for member states to put in place measures to cushion vulnerable communities.
Later this year, we'll have El Nino phase and early next year. What that means for this region? That means a lot of rains.
And this really necessitates a coordinated early warning and response systems.
He says that pockets of desert locusts have been detected in parts of Sudan and southern Ethiopia, which could migrate based on the wind direction. Hence the need for a regional approach in dealing with the menace.
Collaborate between us, but also collaborate with countries that are next to us. And if we don't do, we will not be able to tackle, because these pests don't know boundaries.
Reliance on rain-fed agriculture The use of low-technology farming methods, cyclic floods and droughts are compounding the situation for vulnerable communities.
When pastures fail, or when we have an attack by the locusts and they clear the vegetation, then the number of animals that die are very, very high.
He further notes that already the government has put in place measures to cushion pastoralist communities from the harsh weather patterns.
Those areas that are totally dry, the vegetation dried, we try to do some reseeding to reestablish the pasture.
Pastoralist communities are also being encouraged to transition to agro-pastoralism as a fallback plan during drought. Judith Akolo, Prime Edition.
Now to the theatre. The film Half-Open Window attempts to give insights into the plight of the neglected elderly, what goes on in their mind. Jacqueline Mashari reviews this film, Half-Open Window, in our weekly segment, Cinemas and Theatre.
I'm scared, Martha. Akili yangu imekuwa kama mchanga.
Half-Open Window follows a retired photographer who, after being diagnosed with dementia, his newly found bond with his unemployed graduate grandchild is threatened. This is after his children decide to enroll him in an old folks' home, Jumba la Wazee.
Option 2. You go to a country and find the title deed.
People should have decency towards the aging community, the aging, the old people. We just need to see them as people, and we need to care for them and make sure that they are not just healthy, but they're also happy and they feel fulfilled and they feel welcomed and they feel loved in the society and they don't feel neglected.
Directed by Omar Hamza and produced by Margaret Washera, the film Half-Open Window was differently casted, with the normal calls for auditions not part of the casting process. The production was a success, despite shooting in a cold location.
Normal times we call for auditions and we tell people to send in auditions, but for this one it needed a lot of, to be a bit keen on who it is we were casting.
The main character, Edwin Nyudo, is a very old person. So working with a very old veteran in the industry and a very old actor was interesting to say the least. He's the oldest person I've ever worked with, and again, a very huge learning experience, a very huge moment for growth, both for me and hopefully for him as well.
The film has so far won a few accolades, including at the recent Zanzibar International Film Festival.
So we've been fortunate enough to be nominated to 2 film festivals, the first one being Uganda Film Festival, and the second one being Zanzibar International Film Festival, where we won Best East African Film and Best Actor awards, which has been very fulfilling and very interesting.
It has been slipping away. Soon, hakutakuwa na kitu chochote.
I think it's an interesting time to be an African filmmaker because there's a lot of change, there's a lot of opportunities, and for those who are ready, change is coming, and good change, yeah.
Half-Open Window is commissioned by Africa Magic. You can watch it on Africa Magic Movies. It's also doing a festival run, so maybe one of these days it will come onto a festival.
What the mind can't remember, the heart never forgets. Jacqueline Mashara for Cinemas and Theatre.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, mtaa yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, mwakisha at least kwa siku cheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto. Watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Sasa mimi kwa mshungi kwa mulangoni na pesa ameigua kwa ndani. Pesa na mulangoni anaingiliana na mna gani?
Wewe iko mshungi au wewe iko Masai?
Did you get who is the stealing the money? Did you get him stealing the money?
It was you churabaya iko paya namna hiyo kama red alafu ingia kwa ofisi yangu.
Mimi chura, upendo sipendi.
Mimi hapa niko chura, mimi iko Sunita.
Sikiza basi nikwambie. But how much did you get there is not there?
Hiyo kama sielewi umesema nini?
Mimi inafanya kazi kwa mulangoni. Na ikifanya kazi kwa mulangoni, mulango haijaibiwa. Mimi sijaibiwa. Hakuna kitu mimi iko hapo kwa mimi imeibiwa.
Na hii maneno nitapeleka kwa koti, mheshimiwa. Wasijaribu, unanisikia mheshimiwa, ngoja niongee na mheshimiwa.
A very good evening to you. Thank you for choosing KBC Channel 1 and watching Prime Edition. Now, as always, KBC continues to excel in many ways. This is just one of 18 awards that KBC has received for being an exemplary, providing exemplary coverage in sports content. And of course, the details of these awards will be coming to you in a little bit with Daniel Wahome on the sports segment. But first, let me give you the business news. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, the National Treasury will next week gazette a special committee on pending bills that will audit liabilities over the last 17 years and propose a mechanism to stop accumulation of more pending bills. Once gazetted, the committee will audit all the pending bills.
CS has given a directive that it becomes first charge of every accounting officer. And all LDS have been directed to prioritize payment of pending bills because this government is not going to tolerate accumulation of pending bills. No accounting officer will be allowed to incur new commitments without clearing existing pending bills.
When we incur debt, we have to pay that debt. So in a sense, we have to make sure that we direct the debt that we incur into productive areas so that it can give us returns to give us the future capacity to service that debt.
And we have done well in fully paying our debt service. We are on course and we have not defaulted. We don't intend to default. And this month of July, we even paid heavily on external payments, including a major loan of about 63 million to Exim Bank of China.
Now, Kenya targets to increase coffee production from the current 51,000 metric tons to 81,000 metric tons by lowering the cost of production through subsidizing farm inputs. This is according to Cooperative's Principal Secretary, Patrick Kilemi, who says the national government is also working with county governments to strengthen the extension services to boost coffee production.
Production in Kenya has reduced from a high of 129,637 metric tons in 1988 to a low 36,867 metric in 2020. The government has laid out measures to increase production from the current 51,000 metric tons to 260,000 metric tons by the year 2027. This is expected to be achieved through a number of measures such as lowering cost of production by subsidizing farm inputs, enhancing accessibility of the Shiri Advanced Revolving Fund, revamping the coffee research and strengthening extension services. The Nairobi Coffee Exchange is next week expected to reopen and operate at the new coffee regulatory framework that saw Cooperative Bank shrug off competition from 8 other banks to win the bid as the provider of the direct settlement system technology platform for coffee.
Would wish to ask the stakeholders, or rather the government agencies and departments and the county government, to expedite the process of issuing the milling licenses, so that then we can be able to unlock the coffee that have already been produced.
The direct settlement system aims to eliminate intermediaries from the coffee value chain and ensure fair prices for farmers.
As far as the system is concerned, probably we are looking at the improvement of efficiency in terms of when the money gets to the grower, which again will also help the growers to reduce the amount that they would wish to have borrowed to maybe facilitate the operation.
So far, 11 coffee cooperative unions have been licensed to sell coffee directly at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange, with plans to license 5 more coffee cooperative unions by the end of this month. The coffee direct settlement systems is not only poised to uplift the local farmer, but also drive a positive change for the entire coffee supply chain within the country. Reporting for Prime Edition from Nairobi, my name is Frederick Mwoki.
Still on agriculture, county governments should increase the number of extension officers to improve production. The Kenya Crops and Dairy Market System says inadequate knowledge of the best farming practices was the major challenge to optimal dairy production, as Wycliffe Okech narrates.
The Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems Wednesday conducted a training workshop for various dairy subsector stakeholders drawn from the Western Kenya region, with a view to skill them with modern farming practices. It was during the workshop that improper breeding and nutrition for dairy cattle was listed as the major hindrance to the subsector's potential.
When you've been a farmer, you will understand the perspective from which the farmer operates. He really or she wants to give the best. Sometimes it's the ability to do so that is always a limitation. One big limitation is the genetics, the potential of that cow that actually the farmer has. So a farmer who has a traditional zebu cow would not produce more than 4 liters of milk in a day.
Consequently, the program has adopted a working framework with at least 12 counties in Western Kenya region to improve dairy production by empowering dairy farmers with skills and capital.
So the journey is small. Through various technologies, through various interventions, we are able to work through the farmer, especially with capacity building, advisory services, and to ensure that they are at this spot or step in place.
I started with doing like 2 or 3 inseminations per month. But when KCDMS and ILRI supported us under the USAID funding, as we speak now, I can do like 35 inseminations per month on a good day.
The organization has challenged county governments to increase the number of extension service providers.
And so, the best that a farmer can do is for us to support the farmer to improve that cow that they have to have a higher productivity over time. But you can also have the best of the cows, but if you don't feed the cow appropriately and take good care of the cow in the right way, then it will not be able to maximize its potential.
The organization targets to further increase milk production from an average of 10 liters daily. For Prime Edition, I am Wycliffe Okech.
And plans are underway to expand Wilson Airport in Nairobi to ease pressure on the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. This, alongside aviation safety, security and facilitation, are among the key issues to be addressed during the 8th International Civil Aviation Organization Africa and Indian Ocean Conference, set to begin on the 21st of this month in Nairobi.
Wilson Airport is one of the busiest airports in East and Central Africa, as it accounts for 90% of total domestic flights and 10% of international flights. Despite the rosy numbers, Wilson Airport has only 2 runways. In addition, Wilson Airport, which handles an average of 350 flights daily from 200 operators, has 9 designated parking bays, which affects service delivery.
Some of you who have been to Wilson Airport will notice that it is very congested. It is actually congested, and it's something that we are looking at it, and we will be taking up with our colleagues at Kenya Airports Authority, see what we can be done.
Ahead of the 8th International Civil Aviation Organization Africa and Indian Ocean Conference, slated for the 21st to the 25th of this month in Nairobi, those in the aviation industry want safety, security, and facilitation prioritized during the forum.
We do have far too many operators in Kenya, and this speaks to the regulations we have. But we are looking at this thing. There are quite a number of things that were left to drift, and with the engagement with the stakeholders, we will be able to address that as a board.
Kenya Civil Aviation Authority Director General Emil Arau believes the conference would help position Kenya as an aviation and trade hub regionally.
Kenya is at the forefront on development of the environmental agenda, sustainable aviation fuels, low carbon aviation fuels, LCAF, and also looking at our feedstock, especially the feedstock.
The forum is also expected to discuss the use of sustainable aviation fuel.
Now, learners in technical vocational education training institutes are set to benefit from training on soft skills relevant to their courses to foster creativity and innovation. The National Industrial Training Authority says the training in partnership with TVET institutions will increase employability of the students.
In response to the high unemployment that has seen over 1.5 million youth aged between 20 and 29 with no source of income, the National Industrial Training Authority says they are committed to partner with TVETs, universities and polytechnics to ensure skills produced are useful in the future world of work.
This is where the bottom-up economy is. Any student that leaves the industrial training in this country, automatically they are employed 95%, because they use their fine motor and the skill to do an activity that will give them bread and assist themselves and their families.
Speaking at the Kenya Industrial Training Institute in Nakuru, the chairperson noted that skills mismatch is a key challenge facing the youth, adding that there was a disconnect between the courses offered and the market needs, which the authority was keen on streamlining.
Enrollment of students is very less. Our youth, they are normally looking for white-collar jobs. That's never enough for each one of us. So I advise them to get this one, to get a skilled labor that can assist them so that they can be able to be employed and self-employed.
Trevor Ngindo for Prime Edition.
And that's the business this evening. Sports news is coming up with Daniel Wahome. Do have yourself a lovely night. My name is Betty Kiptum. Bye-bye.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, mtaa yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, at least kwa siku cheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto. Watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
There are times when reason becomes unclear in the heart and forbidden loves come to life. Isabel Montalban will now convert paradise into a land of the wild. She knows her heart is true to one of the Oteros, but is not quite sure who of the 3 it is. Now, their feud will blind them well beyond the core of their blood bond. In these wild lands, it is the rule of heart that is supreme. In wild lands.
Good evening to you. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Prime Edition Sports. Now, KBC sports journalists were among the 240 sports and creative sectors journalists who were fitted today by the Cabinet Secretary for Sports for their immense contribution to the industries. Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba, who hosted the sports and creative journalists at a media breakfast, commended them for their work and encouraged them to be objective in their criticism and coverage.
The Ministry of Sports says plans are at an advanced stage to set up a reward scheme that will see sports heroes and heroines honored annually. Speaking today, Wednesday, in Nairobi, when he honored 250 sports and creatives journalists, CS Ababu Namwamba intimated the government's plan to have a policy that will see national honors and awards better the lives of sports heroes and heroines in the country.
Among things that have already reached cabinet and discussed at cabinet level to become policy is number one, a robust reward scheme. We have also presented a formal submission to cabinet on how to use national honors and awards to better appreciate our heroes and heroines in this space.
The CS, who was accompanied by the PS in the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Ismail Maalim, also took the opportunity to urge Kenyans not to be skeptical about the ability of the nation to host mega international events. The CS said Kenya is hopeful of getting the nod to stage the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations.
We know that Kenyans are very skeptical, and it is because of a history of disappointments. Kenyans are skeptical that when you tell them Kenya will be ready to host Africa Cup of Nations in 2027, many Kenyans will tell you, come on, go tell that to the birds. And by the way, I don't blame Kenyans for being skeptical. It's because of a history of disappointments.
For Prime Edition, my name is Isaac Lemoka.
This is the Cabinet Secretary's Hongera Award that was given to the 250 journalists in the entertainment sector in Kenya. Remember, sports, football is the activity, entertainment is the business, plus also the entertainment. Shukran Waziri. Now, moving on is that Team Kenya bagged both men's and women's 1,500-meter titles at the ongoing Commonwealth Youth Games in Trinidad and Tobago. Nancy Cherop handed Kenya her first gold in the Games after winning the women's 1,500 meters, while Josephat Kipkurui won the men's title in a new Commonwealth Youth Games record that had lasted for 9 years.
Nancy Cherop handed Kenya her first gold in dazzling fashion, smashing women's 1,500 meters Commonwealth Youth Games record in a time of 4 minutes, 12.38 seconds. Janet Chepkomoi bagged silver after clocking 4 minutes, 14.24 seconds, as England Leila Belshaw settled for bronze in 4 minutes, 16.37 seconds. Josephat Kipkurui broke Kumari's Turkey's 9-year Commonwealth Youth Games record after leading compatriot Andrew Kipto to 1-2 finish in men's 1,500 meters.
Hii ndio my first time kukimbia 1,500 na nimeona si mbaya. Kitu yenye imekuwa leo mbaya ni climate pekee chote iko juu leo. Jana hatukuwa naijua.
The Kenyan girl rugby team finished fourth after losing to Fiji 22-10 in bronze medal match. Anna Munyak and Brenda Nyabiage scored tries for Kenya, while Tonona Arieta, Pulileka Ravaela, and Berenado Loeta were some of try scorers for Fiji.
Kuja opportunity kama hii next, to make sure tumekam na medal next. Najua bado si ni youth, bado tuna grow. Najua kuna opportunity nyingi zinakuja, bado tunaendelea.
Titus Mount, who bagged silver for Kenya in men's discus with a throw of 20 meters. The event was won by South Africa's Daniel Tumiso.
Shina yangu imekuwa poa, hata kama nilikuwa na pressure, nimekuja namba 2, namshukuru Mungu kwa hayo. Mimi Trinidad imekuwa nzuri. Kila siku nikikuja uwanja huwa na train.
The 7th edition of Youth Games features 8 disciplines, including netball, athletics, parathletics, beach volleyball, cycling, rugby sevens, swimming, and triathlon.
Women's Premier League champions Vihiga Queens will face New Generation from Zanzibar in their first match of the CAF Women's Champions League qualifiers in the Sekafa region to be hosted in Uganda. Meanwhile, Vihiga Senator Godfrey Osotsi visited the team ahead of their departure to Kampala, Uganda tomorrow.
Vihiga Queens are placed in Group B in the CAF Women's Champions qualifiers alongside JKT of Tanzania, Kigali Women of Rwanda, and New Generation FC of Zanzibar. The Queens will start their campaign against New Generation FC on Sunday before meeting JKT Queens of Tanzania on Monday.
The moment we went to Sekafa and CAF last edition, most of players were being scouted. It came upon us to select some who will replace them, and I think they have done their best because they are new players, yes, but they have done their best to not to let us down and bring our expectations as per the team.
The camp is amazing. Everyone is just focusing at the tournament ahead. There are no side shows, and I know we are going to win the matches.
Eunice Mwangi, Tumaini Waliola, Martha Karani and Aida Atieno will make their first debut in the tournament. Meanwhile, Vihiga Senator Godfrey Osotsi is optimistic the ladies will produce exemplary results in the championship and awarded the ladies 150,000 ahead of their departure to Kampala, Uganda on Thursday.
I came here to motivate them and to encourage them that as leaders of the county, we will be there to support them, both morally and materially, so that they perform and they lift the name of this country and the name of our county, Vihiga County.
For Prime Edition, I'm Sela Onyango.
St. Anthony's Boys High School Kitale will battle it out against Agorati Boys High School to determine who will lead Pool B in boys soccer games after the two teams notched their second consecutive wins in the ongoing Term 2 ball games. In Kakamega County, Western Region representatives Shenderema Boys need at least a draw against Karangare High School to secure their spot in the semis after they were held to a 1-1 draw against Agorosare at a packed Buhungu Stadium. Achola Simon has the details.
You'll be forgiven if you thought this is a game between two top Premier League clubs in the country. But alas, this is a game between Agorosare from Nyanza region and Chanderema from Western region. Yes, there's that little spice of a mini Mashembeji derby. But nonetheless, the turnout for this game is a clear indicator of where soccer lies in the heart of soccer lovers in this country. Cometh the hour, cometh the boys. A mini Mashembeji derby of sorts, a Chanderema Boys High School squared it out with Nyanza representative Agorosare. The match leaving to its billing as one of the most anticipated in the group stages. The crowd that turned up easily putting to shame the attendance witnessed in Premier League games in the country. Chanderema was the first to breach Agorosare's defense for the opener in the first half through the enterprising Maxwell Wamalwa. But a rejuvenated Agorosare equalized after the break through hard-working Geoffrey Omondi. The results leaving the two teams tied at the top on 4 points each, but Chanderema have a better goal difference after they hit 8 past Hofor Harar in the opening game, while Agorosare and a hard-fought 2-1 win over Karangari Boys from Central. Karangari revived their slim hopes of advancing into the semis by beating the pool's whipping boys Hofor Harar by 3-2. Karangari will pray that they can humble the group favorite Chanderema in their last game, while Agorosare will stumble against Hofor Harar. St. Anthony's will battle it out with Nairobi's Dagoretti Boys to determine the winner of Pool B after they all won their second matches. St. Anthony's hit 2 Passerani Boys from Coast, while Dagoretti matching the results against Matiliku Boys from Eastern. In girls soccer, defending champions Vieta Girls played it out to a 1-1 draw against Madira Girls, while Butere thumped Kombani by 5-0. Dagoretti mixed-aged Njambini by 2-1, while Nyanza representatives St. Mary's Luak thumped Mbitini by 4-1. In girls volleyball, Soweto and Kwanzanze won by 3-0 against Viambani and Senior Chief respectively in Pool A games. Kesagon and Mwitoti continued with their winning streak as they edged Karima and Nyakacha girls respectively. In boys volleyball, Tumaini boys lost by 3-1 against Namuela, while Onjiko boys suffered a 3-set defeat against Anderson. Furaha High School was thumped 3-0 by Vitengeni, while Rithimitu won by 3-0 against Tetu boys. The group stage will be concluded on Thursday before top 2 teams head into semis on Friday. Achola Simon, Channel 1 Sports, Kakamega County.
And that's the sport for tonight, so we'll keep you updated on what's happening, especially with the young Malkias who are playing in tomorrow in the Commonwealth Youth Games in the bronze medal match. And as I leave, I would like to hand over to Regina Manyara. And tonight, 10 years ago, with the election that happened in April of 2013, we introduced governors and devolution got into place. And we've got the person who was the chair of the Constitution of Kenya Implementation Commission, who went on to become a judge within the East African Community Court of Justice, Charles Nyachai. And we also have got Catherine Muma, who is the Senate Development Committee, who's a member, Senate Development Committee chair. And we've also got the chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee chair, Sadia Kontoma. And if you're asking for 1/3 gender representation, I speak for the 1/3. The others are 2. He is 1. So the 1/3 rule has been put in here, and the person who's representing the 1/3 of what is supposed to be the minority is a person who was the chair of the Constitution Implementation Commission. So Regina Manyara, over to you. And by the way, 18 of us got this. Remember, KBC is your true sports partner. Tunafanya kazi, tunachapa kazi. Over to you, Regina.
Thank you very much, Wahome. But I think I want to correct your math. If we are 5 in the pool and there's 2 of you, you can't say there's only 1. You know, don't be. But
no, we're talking about guests.
Okay.
Guests. Mathematics.
Well, as they say, you know, the future is female, so we're fine. And congratulations to the 18 of us, the sports men and women who today received accolades from the Ministry of Sports there for exemplary coverage of matter sports. As we say, we are indeed your true sports partner. As put by my colleague Daniel Wahome there, 10 years back, we cast our very first ballot to elect executives to run the counties. But what have been the hits and misses a decade after? That's the conversation we're going to be having tonight. And to start us off with this conversation is none other than former CIC chairperson Charles Nyachai, who was part of the constitutional experts who are involved in the drafting of the Constitution. So, sir, thank you very much for your time. So, question is, 10 years later, has devolution lived to the spirit of the drafters? To you, sir.
Thank you very much. By the way, talking about the maths, Senator Muma was also a member of the commission at CIC. So, yeah, you'll work out your maths then. Now, to try and answer the question, it's very broad. If you were to ask me yes or no answer as to whether I think that the system of devolved government has met the expectations of the drafters of the Constitution and the people of Kenya when they promulgated the Constitution, I would probably be constrained to say not quite. Because I think the expectations were high, very high, and rightly so, because of the reasons that the people of Kenya had wanted to decentralize decision-making, the sharing of resources, and generally what we call development. Perhaps as the discussion continues, we will be able to identify what could have been done more or better to meet those expectations. But I would hasten to add that although I feel that those high expectations haven't quite been met, I think a lot of has been done, a lot has been achieved, and I think it's probably a good time 10 years down the line to evaluate what the challenges have been and how we can overcome these challenges in order for us as a country to be able to move closer towards those expectations of the people of Kenya. So yes, significant strides have been made, but my own personal view is that we haven't quite met the expectations.
Well, thank you very much. That particular, response from the former CSC chairperson, Charles Nyochai, who is part of the panel that we're having tonight discussing on the hits and misses of devolution, has set the pace for this conversation. Now we would want to introduce the views of a man who took over the helm as one of the pioneer governors who later became a Senate Speaker and is currently a governor. We're talking about none other than Ken Lusaka. This is what he has to say in regard to matters of devolution 10 years later.
Devolution, if you ask me, is working. If you go to one of the biggest achievements of the constitution that was promulgated in 2010 is public participation in a lot of things that are happening now. For the first time, people are able to interrogate a budget that appropriates money to deal with their development agenda. Very many health facilities have been put up. Some have been elevated from dispensaries to health facilities. Some have gone to level 4. In agriculture, for example, in Bungoma, we have ensured food security because we have also been giving subsidized inputs, fertilizer, seed to the farmers. The road networks, there are counties in this country that had never witnessed tarmac. As we speak now, we have tarmac in places like Wajir. In terms of street lighting, we now have the promotion of a 24-hour economy, which is functioning because now Mamambogas, border borders are able to do business up to about 10 in the night. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll say we are at about 70% in terms of achievement. There was a law on public participation that was passed because I also agree that sometimes it can be abused. For example, as a governor, you can bring all your sycophants and your supporters to come and rubber stamp what you want. You pay them listening allowance, they come there, listen, and then pass what you want without necessarily participating. So it must also be structured, it must be genuine, public participation, or not just bringing people who are coming to rubber stamp what you want. Now, it is up to the members of parliament, it has the National Assembly and the Senate to live to the occasion and to carry the aspirations of those who have voted for them. But the way I know, in that house, it is about coalitions or it's about parties. So the majority will have their say, their way, the minority will have their say. And the time I was there as a speaker, one of my achievements was that the Senate remained united to defend the interests of the counties. I don't think that there is any senator, for example, who not want more money to go to their counties. But again, the problem, like I've told you, is on coalitions and party positions. The current administration, the current government has really tried. As we speak today, they have disbursed the July funds to the counties, which has never happened since devolution started. So and the constitution says they should be, the disbursements should be timely, because when that happens, we are able to meet our obligations. We are able to pay salaries, we are able to pay our suppliers and all the people who work in the county. The norm and the practice should be that anytime you get any money, you start by paying the pending bills because you had people. But again, politics being what it is, somebody gets to an office and says, those who are contractors that were brought by my predecessor, for example. So let them wait. They're not a priority. The guy, if he comes back, he'll come to pay them. For me, I want to move forward. I want to bring my own contractors and pay them. That has been the problem. We still have those few challenges where the national government is still holding on a few functions that are supposed to be performed by the counties. We are in a conversation. For example, I'm the chairman of Agriculture Committee in COG, where you find that, for example, fertilizer is still being procured by the national government, and we are saying this is a devolved function. There are challenges. We're talking about corruption. We're talking about ghost workers. We are talking about things that happened in the first years of devolution. So some of these conversations, as we head to Eldoret, to celebrate 10 years of devolution in our devolution conference, these are some of the conversations that we are going to be engaging in with the national government to see what is the problem with letting go what has been devolved, because the law says money follows functions.
Well, that is a conversation with none other than Governor Ken Lusaka there, just putting into perspective what he thinks is ailing the devolved units and what can be done. Just to introduce my panel once again, on my far left is none other than former CIC Chairperson Charles Nyochai, and next to him is Catherine Muma, Senate Devolution Committee Vice Chairperson. Welcome, ma'am. And last but not least, IGRTC Vice Chairperson Sadia Kontoma. Karibuni sana. The governor has set the pace. Now, one of the issues that he's brought forth is that he cites that there is a challenge in transition from one leadership within the county to the next. Madam Santia, that's where you come in, Sadia. Tell us, where are we creating enough synergies between county governments, county to county during transition, given that this is just 1 year after we've casted our ballots?
Thank you very much. IGRTC, the institution that I do represent, is created by an act of parliament, IGR Act, and one of the mandates of IGRTC is to provide a platform and a smooth transition between the two levels of government. For us as IGRTC, our role has always been bringing the two levels of government together, one. Ensuring that there is smooth transition from one government to the other. During elections, or after the elections, IGRTC had played a major role in ensuring that we have provided all that is required in terms of the smooth transition. Of course, we have the registers, we have registers of assets, we have the laws that are provided to ensure that the governors and all those who are taking over the MCAs are all sensitized on what is expected of them. We, as IGRTC, again, we bring the two levels of government to ensure that there is harmonious relationship between the two levels of government through cooperation, collaboration, and consultation. And that is a mandate that has been given to us as IGRTC by the IGR Act.
So how do we compare in as far as, transition is concerned, when we first had, the first 5 years of having the devolved units function, that is between 2013 and 2018, and now looking at the later years that we're looking at, now we're doing 10 years cumulatively. How does that transition, the synergy, compare?
In terms of functions,
yes.
The fourth schedule, the Constitution and the fourth schedule had clearly stipulated the roles and the functions of both levels of government. The devolved functions are clearly stipulated. However, in 2013, we all appreciate that it was a big bang for us. Being the first time that we're interacting with the devolution and having walked this journey, all of us appreciate that there could be challenges here and there, emerging issues here and there, lack of clarity on the functions that have been well stipulated also in the fourth schedule. That could also lead to duplication of roles and duplications of functions. Here, IGRTC comes in very strongly to support both levels of government, national government and the county government, by the use of our experts, our stakeholders in the interpretation of the law. What does the law say concerning functions that have been assigned to the county government? What does the law say concerning the functions that have been assigned to the national government? So IGRTC brings the two levels of government together. And that is the role of IGRTC, so that they can have a harmonious relationship between the two levels by facilitating that collaboration and cooperation between the two levels of government.
Okay. Now, we are asking you tonight, what developments have counties brought to your county as a constituent? You can give us your feedback on Twitter, and our Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara. What development has Devolution brought to your county? Get tweeting. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara, and the official station Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1. Now, Madam Catherine Muma, Senate Devolution Committee Vice Chairperson, as oversight, what role has the Senate played then so far, in as far as legislation is concerned, to have this harmonious relation between the national government and the county government, so that they can deliver on the objectives of these devolved units?
Now, first, to indicate that the challenges we are having in transition, in my view, arise from the rivalry. First, in 2013, rivalry between national and county government. Okay. We had a national government that did not want to let go. And because of that, the TA tried to do its job, was not facilitated in terms of costing, functions. So we ended up transferring some functions and not transferring others. Secondly, the transition you're talking about in counties. One government leaves and another one comes, and you have issues of pending bills. It is, I believe, a Kenyan problem, Kenyan because it's also at the national level, where we don't look at governance as a service. We personalize governance so that it's about Governor X and what he has done, and Governor Y, what Governor Y is going to do. So Governor Y, who is coming in after Governor X, will not want to move on with what Governor X was doing, the projects that are halfway through. A problem we've also witnessed at national. We have a lot of so-called white elephant projects because nobody wants to be associated with what the predecessor was doing. So, in short, we need to get to a level where we understand that government exists in perpetuity, that a government is one and you're providing a service. It's not a personal venture where you want a project to fail just because it was a project of your opponent. It's a national problem, it's a county problem, and that needs to be dealt with. Now, when it comes to what Senate is doing, the fourth Senate, in the Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations, we are looking at what kind of laws or what laws are yet to be put in place to ensure that we properly transition and settle devolution. Now, you'll find that very many laws that existed prior to the 2010 Constitution, and there are over 100 laws in all sectors, health, agriculture, water, the laws and regulations. Many of those laws have never been revised to align to the Constitution. And because those laws have not been aligned, we have a lot of institutions at the national level holding on, a lot of parastatals holding on to county government functions and telling you that, but the law that set us up is still in place, so we still need to, until that law has been repealed, we will continue carrying out this function. So as a committee, we recently advised Senate on the need for the country, that is national government, the COG, the Senate, and everybody to work together to ensure that we quickly or rapidly revise or review all the laws that existed prior to the 2010 passing of the 2010 Constitution to ensure that they are aligned to that Constitution. Secondly, I think we could do better in terms of strengthening the intergovernmental relations between national government and county governments. I think we've traditionally operated with rivalry, as though we are supposed to score national government instead of focusing on service delivery as one nation. And I think we could do better by putting in place more regulation, more law that can facilitate the cooperative devolution. That is the kind of devolution that Kenyans wanted in Article 6.
Moving away from, personalized governance, we now want to introduce the views of none other than a governance expert, that is Wanjiru Gikonyo, on her take in regard to where we are 10 years later in as far as devolution is concerned, and her take on matters of governance that have been highlighted by our panel.
Devolution has succeeded in bringing resources to all parts of the country, but the journey is not complete, because even within the 47 counties, there are still parts that are not properly served. Access to water has been an issue. Kenya is 3/4 semi-arid. So I would say we are better than before. I would give it a 6.5%, 6.5 out of 10. I would say the improvement would be on more resources to county, at least 30% of the budget, and around the Kenya Kwanza manifesto and the blocks of the transformation program. Those are county functions, and that money should be in county hands and should go to deepening agriculture, deepening health, deepening water service delivery at the county. We need the political will, and we need Kenya Kwanza administration to keep the promise they made, to align functions and to make sure that the finances follow the functions. And we need the Council of Governors to fight for their money. We were very surprised when they acquiesced in Senate and said we are not going to contest on the division of revenue. They need to contest the division of revenue, not because we have a debt problem, but because the national budget has grown and the percentage going to counties is a percentage of the national budget. Unfortunately, much as we argue for more money to go to the counties, the governors are not using the little money as well as they should. There is too much corruption. There is hiring of people based on patronage, who they know. So the efficiency at the county level is not as high. So there is a mismatch in some cases. This is a matter that needs to be put on the agenda. So we need to look at the transfer of functions, transfer of funds, and the capacity to deliver. But all that is couched on accountability.
Wanjiru Gikonyo there gives devolution 6.5 out of 10 in as far as delivering on its mandate, bringing the services to right to the constituents. I bring you back to this conversation, former CIC chairperson, from where you sit. You are the drafters. You've said if it's a matter of yes and no, you're still at limbo. Gikonyo has beat you to the chase and said 6.5 out of 10. In your capacity, what have been the key achievements of devolution thus far?
Okay. First of all, I'm not as optimistic as either Governor Lusaka or Wanjiru Gikonyo in terms of percentage. For me, if I look at what I believe the people of Kenya aspired to when devolution was introduced and what the framers of the Constitution had in mind, I wouldn't go much higher than 5 out of 10, which is not bad considering where we are coming from. But I fear that if we load ourselves or give ourselves a higher percentage than is the reality, we may compound some of the problems. And as my colleague Senator Muma said, devolution from the onset 10 years ago was not embraced certainly wasn't embraced by many players, foremost amongst those being the national government. And even if you look at how the first functions what Madam Vice Chair referred to as the big bang. It was almost like one may even wonder whether it was done in good faith. It was almost like the national government took the view that, oh, you want the functions given to you by the Constitution, take them. Irrespective of whether there was a proper foundation for the counties to take over those functions. And then when you look over the years, even like the constitutional process of financing the functions, there's never quite agreement as to even the percentage, the money that goes to the counties, what it represents in percentage terms of the national revenue. Before this year, before the current government, there was always a problem of, in any event, that figure that is agreed on, how you get it to the counties. But of all these, the biggest challenge, the way I see it, is, as Wanjiru rightfully said, the funds are supposed to follow the functions. What that means is that these functions that are being transferred, those that have been transferred previously by the Transition Authority, those that are currently being worked on to be transferred by the IGRTC, I don't think we can escape the process of costing this function.
Costing. And actually you picked this from my mouth because this is an issue that has been brought forth.
Yeah.
The issue of revenue allocation has been quite an issue when it comes to operations down at the counties. Now, just looking at the brief statistics, over the last 10 years, we're looking at around 2.4 trillion shillings that has been disbursed over the last 10 years to various counties. Give or take, that is around 30% to the audited approved revenues. When it comes to revenue allocation, do you find it enough to support the functions that have been, over transited to the counties? And as we said, I've heard Chair say, the funds should follow the functions. Madam Senator.
Now, when we transferred the functions, one thing happened at that time. We also en masse transferred the human resource without checking to know whether counties were only taking the human resource they required. So the counties were told not to lay off anybody from the former local governments and to take everybody who came with a function. Now, as a result, the counties have usually had a budget that is skewed, recurrent budgets that go up to 70%, and development budget that is less than 30%, some of it even 10%. And everybody speaks in one line and says, your recurrent should be 30%, but nobody wants to deal with the fact that we actually offloaded the burden of counties taking on the resource they did not require and being blocked from bringing in a resource that they actually require. So we have some kind of mess around there. Despite that, I think counties by now should have thought through how best either to retrain the resource that they have, redeploy it in order to deliver more on the development. So I think the revenues or the equitable share that counties have received could have been utilized better. Is it enough? No, because the national government is still holding a lot of money which actually should be down with the counties. How does the Ministry of Health, which where the services have been devolved, have a bigger development budget than all the 47 counties. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense at all.
Now, let me
does,
just throw this to the expander to the works. There's been this talk of 1 man, 1 shilling. That's the conversation around, having more monies to the country. From what you're just talking about in as far as revenue allocation, 1 man, 1 shilling. Funds to follow functions. Is this maybe something that we need to look into?
But the 1 man, 1 shilling is about how you allocate the revenue.
Yes.
It's part of the formula. What we need to ask ourselves, what is the national government doing with county functions? Why do we have a regional development agency purportedly carrying out agricultural functions that are being carried out by counties? That's where you begin. And if you go there, and we've asked the IGRTC to actually do that, you will find that you have a list of parastatals particularly who are doing double job. And one would want to scrutinize and find out where is that money going. If county governments are carrying out that task, exactly what are you doing? So, and can that money, can we wind up these parastatals? By the way, the Abdikadir report actually recommended that.
Yes, it does.
That we need to rationalize the number of parastatals so that those holding county functions are wound up. The monies go to county functions so that they deliver to counties so that they can deliver the services, and the fewer that are there are strengthened so that they can carry out the national government functions of good policy, technical support, enforcement of standards, and setting up of those standards.
Ma'am, Sadia, I can see you nodding. You are in charge of looking at how we've created these synergies, how we're transiting. Now we hear from Senator there saying that national government is still holding on to some functions, to some funds, yet functions have been offloaded to the devolved. How do we correct this?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good question. And I want to say that IGRTC is mandated to look at matters of function. Actually, it took over the residual functions of Transition Authority. And one of the residual functions is transfer of functions. It is 10 years in devolution. We want first and foremost to appreciate the new administration, our president, who gave his directive during his inauguration that he would wish to see all the functions, devolved functions, to be fully devolved to the counties. IGRTC, on that directive, had to undertake this exercise. We were supported as IGRTC, which we appreciate the support that we have been given by the president, and we embarked on this exercise. The objective of this exercise was to identify those functions that are devolved but being performed by the national government. To identify again the resources, attendant resources that are meant for those functions, and whether there are other functions that were not being funded. Why are these functions not being fully devolved? Could there be some legislative gaps? Are there issues concerning the laws? So as IGRTC, we embarked on that exercise, and we brought on board all our stakeholders. Council of Governors, we brought on board ministry, department, and agencies, and we also brought Kenya law reforms. We also brought on board CRA, among others. During this exercise, we were able to identify several elements of these functions that required some clarity. We had come up with sector teams, came up with 12 sectors. Among them, we have agriculture, health, water, education, just to mention a few. And we were able to look at all the functions as per the 4th schedule, those that we thought needed clarity. Elements were identified, resources were identified, and currently where we are, as IGRTC, we have prepared a report, a sector report, we had shared with the experts, where we sought their views to advise and guide IGRTC on whether we are within that law. And one of our experts is Mr. Nyachai, who is here, whom we appreciate for the good work he has done. We are in the process of sharing that report with cabinet secretaries, COG, whereby they will give us their inputs. That will be as part of our public participation. Of course, the law dictates, we have the constitutions, but we want consensus in terms of ownership also, so that going forward, we don't have conflicts between the two levels of government.
Yes.
From there, we shall take the report to IBEC, and we shall take it to Summit. Then next phase will be on the implementation of those reports, and we are hopeful that during that time, Senate will be able to support this process by allocating the funds through the CARA to those specific functions, the elements of those functions that have been identified.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, we've talked about the you've mentioned the 7 elements, 12 sectors, among them agriculture, water, health, and education. This is just but a sample of how much in total audited reports between 2013 to 2021 that the devolved units have received. As per our calculation, this is from the National Treasury, this sums it up to 2.4 trillion shillings. We see the amount keeps on, increasing as we go. And we've seen, members of the National Assembly, they are still garnering for more. And we've already established, just to look at what we had between 2017 and 2018 there, that is quite a number. Total 2.4. Let's see more. That's just to ensure that you can see it back at home. But in totality, we have 2.4 trillion shillings for the last audited report, that is up until 2021. If we're talking about having the right funds supporting the right functions within the devolved units, then what are there existing, are there existing presidential directives, from a legal notices that are still, that give powers to the national governments to take over county functions? Maybe we can hear it from the drafters of the Constitution. Are there still in existence that allow the national government to take over these county unit roles? Case in point, what happened to Nairobi County in the last dispensation? The national government swooped in, and even redirected revenue collection.
Okay.
Was that constitutional first? Maybe you're here.
The Nairobi one?
Yes.
The principle, in my view, I don't know, I've never discussed this with my colleague Senator Muma, but in my view, the principle was okay. I have issues with the process that was adopted in that case. But you see, I think what is important here is to distinguish two different processes. What the IGRTC are doing at the moment is to discharge the constitutional what the Constitution requires, that those functions in the first instance, or we can call them original transfers, so that they go from the national government to the county governments. Now, thereafter, the Constitution and the law provides for a process by which, within certain specified situations, if the two levels of government agree, the national government can.
If the two levels of government actually agree.
If they agree.
Okay.
But that's a different process. But in the first instance, the process of transferring the functions to the counties has to be discharged. But Regina, here, in my view, the elephant in the room, and this is an elephant that must be tackled at some point, is this whole issue of costing. Even when we look at the figures there, it doesn't really tell us what is it when we say that this function is a devolved function, like what we call exclusively devolved functions like health, agriculture, those functions that are exclusively devolved, for example. Because at the end of the day, devolution is about delivering services to the people. What question is, this is the elephant, what does it cost to deliver these functions? So that, for example, I don't think you need to be an expert in anything to be concerned by the issue that Senator Muma raised. How is it that you look at the health, the national health budget? Health is a fully devolved, other than policy and so on. Yeah. How is it that when you look at the figures of what the budgetary provision to the national government is, and you compare that to what goes for health to the county governments, how is that math? I was never very good at math, but you must ask that. If we do not address this elephant in the room about costing, and therefore the counties, the county governments get the funds that follow the functions that are being transferred to them so that they can deliver the services to the people, there will be, in my view, a continual challenge to the success of devolution.
Devolution. Now let's bring in, okay, madam.
I was going to add to it. My view is that the day we get good political will by a national government around devolution, in fact, that national government will outperform itself. Because if it does what it's supposed to do, for instance, the equalization fund has never been operationalized. Yes. 10 years later, this is provided for, but national government has never found it fit to operationalize that. We are hoping, we are actually in the process of trying to pass the equalization fund bill for the first time, and I hope that will help. Now, if that fund is operationalized, it is supposed to be deployed to the marginalized areas to help bring up development. Who will get credit for that? It's on county functions, but who will get credit for that? So if they have goodwill and they let go the funds and allow proper enforcement, they will actually bring development. If we strengthen, as I said earlier, if we strengthen the intergovernmental relations, the NMG story is actually provided for under Article 187 of the Constitution. Governments at either level can actually transfer functions to be implemented for them at the other level. But there must be an agreement in a particular manner. The resource then must follow, and there must be supervision on how that function is carried out. That did not happen. But if that was used, there'll be a moment when national government will say, can we transfer the security function at the very village level to Turkana County to do it for us? And they might handle cattle rustling better if they do it that. There'll be a moment when Turkana will say, why don't we allow national government to do for us a dam, a big dam, in order for this to happen? It is provided for in the Constitution. And Article 189 provides for cooperation. How can you cooperate? And that cooperation is contemplated between national government and county government, and county government. So if we put in place the law that brings in place the regional blocks, that is able to provide 3 counties to come together and do something together, a border county to be able to deliver services in a particular way, we would actually move. But everybody is thinking in their little corner and imagining that if the other one comes near, then a rivalry that actually is stifling development, in my view. So we need to open up our minds to just do what the Constitution required, and whoever allows that. And my view is national government is the big brother here who needs to let go its own insecurity around letting go the functions of counties.
You're actually
So
you're preempting our next line of conversation, because you're talking about, we're about to talk about, political interference, because this is also another issue that needs to be addressed. But first let's hear what Wanjiku has to say in regard to, devolved functions and if they have indeed delivered.
Imesaidia hizi kama Waturkana. Kitu ya kwanza,
Well, we have a raft of, views from various Kenyans. Just a bit of a technical glitch there, but we will soon be hearing from our Wanjiku there, who we had an opportunity to just do a spot check as we look at, 10 years into devolution. Now, the rivalry that Madam Muma, you mentioned, it's one, I think, that has been raised by IGRT when you said that, the State Department on Devolution is usurping, devolution, usurping their mandate. And now, can you tell us, Madam Sadia, what, expound on it, and also tell us what you are doing in your capacity, because this is seemingly stifling operations within the county. And yet the counties, the devolved units, their core mandate is to deliver service to the grassroots.
Thank you, Regina. I think, in my opinion, and I think that is it, there is no vacuum in the law. I think where we have a challenge is the lens that we use to see through the law and the implementation of that law. When you talked about transfer of functions from one level to the other, although Nairobi County had transferred its functions to the national government, the body or the institution that was supposed to oversee that transfer of function is IGRTC. We were not involved during that time. However, when the new administration came in place, Governor Sakaja had requested IGRTC to take its place. And of course, we did. And we had overseen the transfer of functions from Nairobi County, from the NMS to Nairobi County. That is the role of IGRTC, and the law clearly stipulates that. Mm-hmm. If the law is followed to the letter, I am sure we will not have any problem. IGRTC is mandated to look at matters of function. Yes. When we don't follow the law, we create conflicts between the two levels of government. As IGRTC, what do we do at that juncture? One of our mandates is to resolve disputes through alternative dispute resolution. We have been supported again, very clearly to repeat, by the President's directive that no institution should take another government institution to court. That gives IGRTC the opportunity to relook at all the disputes between the two levels of government, yes, and also amongst the county government, as per IGR Act, section 30 to 33. When we have disputes between the two levels of government, they register the disputes and we pursue those disputes through mediation.
Mm-hmm. How many have been registered so far?
We have received so far about 44 disputes. And so far, we have been able to resolve 22 disputes. We are looking at about 3, which we are just about to conclude, writing MOUs between the counties and the national government. And I think on matters of ADR, IGRTC, we are performing and we are getting support from both levels of government. So for us, as IGRTC, our doors are opened on matters of disputes. That is the much we can do as IGRTC. On matters of, you said on SDD also, that was usurping our mandate. Yes, we can say yes, very clearly, because the law clearly has given us roles and responsibilities. But when an institution comes up with a gazette notice to take over those responsibilities and assign itself, then here is a problem.
a conflict.
And the much we can do is also to engage other relevant institutions to support and come and see what is happening. Recently, we were before Senate. We had a meeting previously also. I think 3 times we have met Senate on matters of intergovernmental relations, and we are relating well with both National Assembly and also the Senate, and also other government institutions. So I think what we need to do as an institution, what we need to do as a government, what we need to do as the people of Kenya is let us follow what the law says. We use the right lenses to look at those constitutions, the laws, and follow what the law says. Yes,
Senator Muma, IGTRC has been before you 2-3 times over this issue of, you know, this particular State Department taking over its roles. As Senate, you provide oversight. Are we in the right direction? You know, if we have this government pitting against each other, we may not actually achieve what it is that we are. From Senate oversight, how do we fully address this?
One, we actually asked the IGRTC to write to us. And actually they mentioned that they may have written to us and we would look at it. Properly speaking, IGRTC is expected to be a neutral actor that is actually a secretariat for the summit that serves both the Council of Governors and the national government. And it is the best institution to actually carry out those tasks because it's a neutral person. But when you take a national government entity trying to take over the role of a neutral entity, then it's likely that the Council of Governors might reject what the State Department comes up with. Or it's possible that the State Department will be biased in the manner in which they look at the issue. So it's a matter, again, that would require better intergovernmental relations so that around the table this issue is discussed and the State Department is told, no, you're crossing the line. Why don't you just facilitate? The funds for IGRTC are issued through your department, and it is best to ring-fence those funds and give them to IGRTC to carry out their task. But better still, we are trying to come up with an amendment to the Intergovernmental Relations Act so that we can give IGRTC its independence, but also create independence for other institutions. For instance, we are finding oversight of county governments difficult because the funds for county assemblies are merged with the executive funds. So most county assemblies are actually acting as puppets of governors. So a governor will take them wherever they want and they will do whatever the governor wants. So we are also coming up under the Intergovernmental Relations Act. We think we need to separate so that the funds of county assemblies are independent and separate in order for the county assemblies, which together with the Senate, as opposed to oversight, the county executives are able to actually carry out this function better than they are currently carrying out here.
Okay. Now we have the views ready. The glitch has been handled. Let's hear what Kenyans had to say in regard to matters of service delivery in the devolved units.
Devolution imesaidia sisi kama Waturkana. Kitu ya kwanza, sisi hatukuwa na hospitalini huko nje. Imetusaidia kutujengea dispensary, tumepata ECDs. Leo hii mahali tunasimama hapa ilikuwa mchanga. Leo hii tuko na parking katikati ya town.
Alafu pia naona kwa wafanyabiashara wa mama mboga wako na soko mali wanauzia.
Vile tulikuwa tunaenda kama ni mabarabara, ni lazima tukikojea mpaka rais akuje tumwambie tuko na shida ya mabarabara. Siku hizi hapana. Devolution iko karibu na sisi. Tunaweza kunegotiate katika mikutano ile tunaitwa na governor, inaitwa public participation.
Bado public participation iko lacking. Serikali haijajicommit sana kwa public participation, na mwananchi pia saa nyingine mara unataka ulipwe. Sasa unataka ulipwe kivipi ili ujihusishe katika masuala ambayo yatakusaidia?
The ECD now happened that now we are getting into CBC. We expect ECD now should be fully enhanced so that because it's a devolved function.
we have had women getting our positions and opportunities and platforms for leadership available to them, because the devolved functions brought a lot of leadership opportunities that have availed opportunities to the women in this country.
Kenya ingefanya wasaidie vijana wapewa kazi, hii maneno zaidi ya chakula hii. Sisi wenye hatuna kabisa hadi sasa tunaumia kuumia.
Kwa upande wa health kwa sawa na tunapata matibabu vizuri, but upande na NHIF tunakatwa hiyo pesa, lakini haitumiki kabisa. Lazima utoe pesa kwa mfuko wako.
Well, those are just some of the views. There are some saying it's working, others want it improved. Now, former chair there, CSE, Mr. Nyachai, then, was there a time frame actually for us to have fully implemented the constitution? Was there a time frame?
Good question. My reading of the constitution, there was a part of the implementation that you can say there was a time frame. Of course, in the case of the devolved government system, there were things that were supposed to be done within a time frame of 3 years. As regards the implementation of the constitution in its entirety, I think there was what was to be done within that 5-year period when CIC was in place. But I think the framers of the constitution logically contemplated that implementing the constitution was a continuous process. Now, in the case of devolution, and now we're talking 10 years down the line.
Yes.
I think it's a very good opportunity to look at the only aspect of the law, in my view, that I would be concerned about as regards, getting devolution right is, and I think Senator Muma referred to it, is I definitely think IGRTC needs to be strengthened.
Yes, capacity building.
So that they can actually deliver on the mandate that the law contemplates. But beyond that, I don't think it's a question of the law. You used a phrase a little earlier on, either you or Senator Muma, something called political will. This has been a problem from the onset. Yes. I dare say the situation is probably better now than it was when we started implementing devolution. But there's still a lot to be done in terms of, when I say political will, I'm not saying either level is being antagonistic. But there's something Senator Muma said at the very onset, that is just the psyche of letting go in order to comply with the Constitution. As late as last week, just to give an example, I saw in the papers a Ministry of the National Government advertising construction of markets around the counties. Now, markets are very clearly an exclusive county function. So we need to understand what is it that's just an example. Yes. What is it that is going on. So I think that fear of letting go, we haven't overcome it.
Now, as we work towards a close, we have seen over the years, we had the BBI. It failed. Now we also had a case of doctors angling for, to be actually reverted back to a function, or rather, a change. Then we also have the national government. Then we also have a bloated workforce within both county as well as national government. We also now even have a section of people who are pushing to have actually government having the position of prime cabinet secretary entrenched in the constitution. Are we saying it is time to actually review, or rather relook at the constitution? Is it time, Senator Mo?
I think every so often you'll find that there's something in the Constitution that could have been phrased better or that we can do without. Is that thing the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary? In my view, no. Is that thing reversing the function of health, making doctors national government officers? No. Because for a county government to deliver on its function, it needs financial and human resources. So there's no way doctors who are working for county governments can be getting their instruction from elsewhere. That is actually undermining that service. But we need to reach that level where we are able to support some of the functions that support some of the basic rights like health. What do we do with our health human resource? What do we do with our nurses, our doctors, and all of that? And we need to be able to look at that so that we have a conducive work environment that is able to enable us to deliver on that service. Is the solution taking it back to national government? No.
And also there are those who are proposing that some counties also learn to get to generate their own revenue. How feasible is it, looking at Turkana and the rest that are already fall under the cadre of marginalized?
Yes, that's one of the things we actually, in my view, we need to strengthen. I think there is a lot of pilferage in counties around on-source revenue. We need to find a formula where we can help counties to eventually be able to collect enough to pump back into the services. I think it's Wanjiro who talked about corruption. The level of corruption actually in this country, both at national and county levels, has to be dealt with. I personally think we have enough funds in this country to deliver on these services if we dealt with the issue of corruption. That's a bigger, I guess, a different debate that we need to actually work with. But there's one other issue you talked about. When it comes to human resource, we have reached a place where we are actually politicizing the public service. We've had a lot of our peers is firing things they can fire. They can take on the role of an independent commission, a public service commission. A governor thinks he can take over the role of the county public service board, and they just want to fire. So every time we have a transition, the public servants are not delivering on their service because they don't know whether they are going to be thrown out of their job because they are perceived to be not politically correct with the government that is in place. That's another problem that is actually we need to deal with.
Address. It seems that this conversation actually, yes,
a quick
30 seconds each as we come to a close.
Yeah, a very quick comment. I think to answer the question, my answer to the question which you raised is yes, I definitely think that 10 years down the line since devolution kicked in, and 12, 13 years down the line since the promulgation of the Constitution, I think it's as good an opportunity as any for us to look not just at the Constitution itself, because as Senator Moma says, there could be things that we could look and say, yeah, we can word this better and so on. But to ask ourselves whether it is the 50% or so that I think we have fallen short, or the 30% or so that Governor Lusaka or 35 Wanjiro, that where we have fallen short. Why have we fallen short?
The bottlenecks to address
yes,
the bottlenecks.
And what we can do to overcome that. Finally, let me just say this. Let me just say this.
Yes.
For me, let's use all the institutions. Honestly, I wouldn't run away from even the courts. Some of these
all
things,
of them to play
even to define some of these things, we can go to the Supreme Court and get advisors.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Sadia, as we come to a close.
Yes, thank you so much. For me, I think for devolution to work, it's high time for us now to assess the successes and the challenges we have gone through as a nation on matters of devolution. And to have harmonious relationship between the two levels of government for the betterment of service delivery, then from where I sit, IGRTC needs to be strengthened. This has been also in one of the summit resolutions that IGRTC must be strengthened. How do you strengthen IGRTC? We need the capacity of IGRTC to be built. We need IGRTC to be given that space for it to be as neutral as possible without inclining on either sides of the two levels of government. We need to be funded for us to dispense our mandate as that neutral body that looks at matters between the two levels of government so that we can enhance the relationship between the two levels of government, national government and county government. My parting shot. Thank you.
Wow. A second?
I think all players could do better.
Could do better.
And, the parliament could do better to support devolution. The national government can do much better to help support devolution, and county governments can perform better to give confidence to the people that devolution was the right thing for the people of Kenya.
Well, we come to a close. Suffice to say, we can all give devolution a 6.5 out of 10. You're watching Prime Edition on KBC Channel 1. I'm Regina Manyara.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, mtaa yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, mwakisha at least kwa siku kucheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto. Watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.